Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Harebrained Games. Today we're going to do something that has not been done since the world was formed. Not really, but 4 years ago plus now, I did a review on Hitler's Reich, World War II in Europe, when it was fresh off the presses, hot off the boat, coming over from across the pond to the distributor and to me. And I really, really liked it, though it had a couple caveats to my liking it, one of which was the difficulty in onboarding for many people from the rules, organization, etc. And so, now that the rule book, a new rule book, not only has been published, but it's also been, again, made its way across the pond to me via the GMT to me, and I've read through it. I set it up and did another run through, etc. I have actually decided to go ahead and do what I call a revisitation. For over 4 years ago, I really liked this game. I gave it a high score despite the fact, because I thought it had some things that really stood out at that time as not seen before, mechanisms and style and things about it that just were so different and refreshing that I liked it. But it's been 4 years. What does that mean? It means it's time to revisit it now with the new rule book and see if I can still recommend it. So the one thing I want to point out before you get into this review is that during the playthrough, I did notice something that I want to point out. When I did an amphibious assault from England over to Calais, there is a missing control marker in that sea zone. Before we even start, I'm just going to let you know now. I've already boxed it up. I'm not going to take it back out and redo it again. I'm lazy and I'm full of hair. And so just note that so that it's all clear. Let's get to it. Okay, let's see what comes inside the box of Hitler's Reich. It's pretty much unchanged from when I got it 4 years ago. You get the board, and it's not a full-size board, which is fine because there's reasons for that. There are the board is very clean, not a ton of detail. But there's enough detail to be able to see at a glance how you're doing and what you need to do. A lot of these are sort of helper guidelines, because in the middle of battle or whatever, there's going to be times when you're going to need to remember certain things that you can do asynchronously as a result of successes. So you've got that going on. Just reminders. Here you've got the hand size track. Hand size is sort of your hit points as well as your hand size. When you run out of cards and you can't card no more, you lose. And then the year track, which will be each player will independently be heading towards the end of given years through the use of their conflict deck. You have a set of action or event cards. And these are what you're going to try to procure throughout the course of the game. You also have a deck of conflict cards. These are cards you're going to play quite frequently to try to bid and vie for control either of territory or of cards for use. There's also a set of common cards that can be procured in the same manner, and the Allies have a similar situation here, where they have their conflict cards, and then they have the event cards they're going to try and procure, and event cards stay face up. In your tableau, you can have up to 6, sometimes more, but for the most part 6. And there you go, variety of pieces. You have fleets. That's these toothpicks. And then you have these, which can show control when you take over control. The beauty of the map is that the game starts off with pretty much everything predefined for control, so you don't need to cover these up per se. You could, I guess, if you wanted to, but generally speaking, this is its innate control, and without an actual opposing marker on it, that's the control. That's who controls it and who ends it. So with that, you get the 2 player aids. We have updated player aids for this year. You also have the 2nd edition rules of play. This is a reworked, reordered, revisited with an index with a bunch of other stuff. Manual, very, very different than the original. I actually compared the two, and they're quite different in structure. The playbook stays the same, so you still have the playbook that you'll use to set up different scenarios or deal with the one-player bot. Look at the design notes, feast your eyes on those, etc. And by now, since it's been years later, you also have some nice helper sheets on Board Game Geek that will help simplify, give these to people to help get them up to speed on the game. Oh, and you get dice, because dice matter. All right, that's it. Let's get into an example of play. Now, 4 years ago, I did a playthrough, and so you can always revisit that and take a look at kind of how I did it from scratch. I'm starting here in kind of a game in progress because I'm going to show you, I'm going to do a more quick overview. You've already seen it before if you've seen that old video. If not, I'm at least going to give you a gist of the game. The purpose of the game is to win. How you win is in a variety of ways. When you get your opponent's hand size to 0, you win. If you get your opponent's hand size to 3 or less while you are at max hand at the end of at a turn, you win. At the end of 1945, there are particular parameters that tell you who won, how much they won by, etc. If you control a certain amount of production centers of your enemy, and that's these here, where you'll see these oil barrels, if you control them at the end of your turn in sufficient quantity, you win either side. And that's that. That's how you win. Now, the methods and machinations of how you win vary greatly. Here's what generally happens. Each player starts with a hand of cards, and there's some configuration, but generally speaking, I've used up some of my event cards so far. But you have your tableau, you have your cards, and these are not visible to your opponent. I'm doing this for example. You would normally have these in your hand to go, ha ha, pretty sneaky, sis, kind of stuff. Here we have, these are the 5 cards available. These are the cards, and they match the hand size. So you're always trying to keep your hand, nearly every action you do, you try to keep your hand size beefed up to the maximum hand card size so you have the most options. It's just in your benefit. On your turn, and it begins with the Axis and then goes to the Allies and back and forth. There is no end of round per se or anything. There are interrupts. If you get to the point where both people wind up, going into the next year, you stop, you do some things, reshuffle some things. Some event cards might come back, some might not. And then you just keep rolling. So it's really turn by turn by turn by turn by turn until someone wins. So that's one of the things to note, is that there's no turns, rounds. Everyone does a turn and a round, etc. In that regard, though, the cards are the key, and what you're going to do on your turn is one of any of 8 different things, some of which are very simple, some of which are a little more complex, one-time affairs. But before we go with that, let's talk about the cards. These cards that you're going to vie for over here and here all have different symbology that represent what type of card they are. This card here, for example, is a card with a condition that if it's in your tableau and you use it to try to as part of your attempt to try to either take over land or sea or take over a card, you're basically, it's like the lottery. You're putting it in there. You're anteing up. You're saying, okay, if I win this match with this, then I can turn it over, and then in my next turn I can flip it up. If I don't win, then it goes back, and I got to go vie for control of it again. So there's always a risk-reward factor going on. That's what those are for. This is a card that's so powerful that no matter what happens, if you use it and it gets activated, it goes back and you have to try for it again. There are also cards such as Convoy, which once you use it, when you win this card, you don't even put it in your tableau, in your area. You basically just follow the instructions on the pin pad, and then you place it out of play. Now, this is different than certain cards like this, which are one time no matter what. And so those are the 4 times of cards. But if you win this one, this can only be activated after 1942. So you have to, or from 1942 on. So you're going to have to be judicious on that regard and stuff. And so that's how that goes. And that's really the 4 corners. All of the rest of the icons just kind of tell you a little bit about what this can be used with. For example, this can be used in a paratroop attack, which is one of the options available if you have the right card. Amphibious attack, if you want to go across the sea to attack something that the Allies will be very, very interested in doing. And a blitzkrieg attack. So when you have different operations, you can use them. And it also tells you, like example, which it can be used for. One of the things to note is that while the Axis have one contiguous, there are Italy cards, Italian cards, and German cards. And these cards are pretty simple. The number matters. And there's usually some sort of particular thing that they do well or not do well. For example, this is probably the highest card you can get, Supreme Commander. Not only does it win ties if you have a tie at the end of a conflict, you can also re-roll 3 times and such. Whereas the Italians, they might have a powerful card, but they lose ties. So there's always a little bit of a risk there. And then, what the heck? What the heck is that? That's not right. Hey, there are spies in the camp. Anyway, sorry, that's sneaky. Pretty sneaky, sis. All right. There you go, 8 cards. All right, on the other side, you've got the Americans and you've got the Russians. And the difference there is that you don't have, there's nothing really about winning and losing ties here, per se. The number matters and the reroll matters. However, if you are over here on the Russian side, you're going to have to play Russian cards if you can during conflicts. So anything that involves like Axis and or like German and Russian forces competing here in sea or land areas, you're going to have to, if you can, use their cards instead. So yeah, so keep that in mind. And that's all of kind of the survey of it, of what goes on. None of this matters if you don't know how it works. So let's get into an example. We're going to have the Axis pick up where they left off. We had the Americans managed to last turn grab this card through a conflict. This is going to allow them an amphibious assault, which means that they can start an attack from one of their locations and go across and actually make some headway into some place somewhere. They also have the Master Spy that they started with. This one's cool because in a conflict, your opponent has to kind of reveal their hand a bit before to give you some better options. In this regard, though, the Axis start. They flip over any cards that from battles they've won. A lot of generals. You'll see a lot of generals here. Generals, one can be used for every conflict. Landing craft, you've got all kinds of things. The one thing that the Axis have a lot of is they have the ability to try to win events to decrease allied hand size. Or increase their own, which is going to be important. So, all right. But first off, let's do that. Let's do a contention. Let's say that no, yeah, we're going to do this. This isn't wise. Generally speaking, you want to do things. Well, here's the basic gist of the game. If you ever lose a conflict, there's only 1 or 2 exceptions, but if you lose something, you've lost everything. Your turn stops right then and there. It's like sudden death. Kind of overtime kind of situation. So because the way the game works is you can do an action on your turn. 4 of those actions you just do and it ends your turn outright. 4 of those actions you can do, and if you win, you get a bonus action, which you can then earn from one of the. It's a subset of all the actions you can do, and so you have to be a little crafty about that. Anything that automatically ends your turn, you may want to not do right away because you might want to try something and then aim for that bonus action. Here's an example: like I could try for that event. And if I win, I could do one of these other actions. If I lose, I don't get to do anything else. And so with that, and what are the options? Well, I'm glad you asked. There's Reorganize, which if you have a really sucky hand, it lets you discard. You have to reduce your hand size, so you're going to take a hit, or you need to increase the hand size of your opponent, and then you can refresh your card hands, because it might be important if you get really, really low cards and you're like, I'm not going to win any battles. I just have to bite the bullet and do it. There's Fortify. Fortify says take one of your fortifications and place it somewhere on the map. This is going to give you a defensive bonus when that place is attacked. If it's a production center, you keep it star side up. If it's not, you keep it on the bottom. But and you want to protect your production centers. That's how you keep your hand size from going into the toilet. Fleets. Placing fleets will give you an advantage or an edge whenever there's a conflict in that region. And so you can place those anywhere. There's no real restrictions on that. There is, however, planning. And planning is for big pushes. Big pushes are mega moves. They're guaranteed 2 actions on your turn no matter if you fail, which is important in certain things. They also open up opportunities for what's called operations. There are 3 major operations that take place that really just stop the presses, you complete the operation, and you move on. They're very historical. So, for example, Operation Barbarossa, when you have to, the Axis, if they have a big push marker, then they want to do an operation, well, then they can. And their operation is Barbarossa. To do that, they have to have a big push marker. The Allies the same way. They have to have a big push or an Allied big push available in order to do that. So, and that's a risk one in that you have to play a card, roll some dice. If the dice are less than the card value you played, then you get to have the big push marker. These are very rare. These only happen a couple times. The big push can be advantageous because if you really want something to happen and you don't want to risk having to fail right out, then you might want to have a big push, like save up for that big push, and then use that big push to guarantee that, for example, you're an invasion from Tobruk into Naples or something like you do that is more assured. Then you have events, and events, again, it's a conflict where you're battling out to see who gets an event card. Attack, when you're going to attack either a land or a sea region. Obviously, you have to attack and use the special rules. Land has to be adjacent. Here, for example, I attacked Yugoslavia via Hungary. Could have picked any of them, but adjacent here, and then a blitzkrieg to here. That's another special thing that you can do if you win. Again, everything's predicated on if you win. I also got control of the sea region, added a fleet. I fortified myself pretty well. Then you have an attack, like we talked about, and then the big push, again, is just one action that bundles up two of these actions together in a atomic unit, and then the operation. So with that, let's just get to some playing, okay? Now, we want Wolfpack. We're going to try for Wolfpack. We set that there because that would be really cool to decrease the allied player's hand size. So what do? Well, here's how conflict resolution works. First off, you can play any events that will help out. Now, there aren't any here. These all deal with land conflicts, whatever, so don't have to worry about that. Here, though, do we have anything here? No, nothing here. There are certain ones, for example, special ops in an event conflict that lets you do re-rolls of dice, etc. You know what? Let's pretend that we have that. Hey, we can do anything. It's our game, right? House rules. Okay, so the Axis player isn't going to play any events, but the Allied player is going to play this, and it says, at the end of an event conflict, player may re-roll one or more dice. If no dice are re-rolled, put it back in front of the player. Remains for use. Okay, and this is one that once you use it would go back into, no matter what, win or lose, would go back into the array, the events table array at the start of your opponent's turn. So let's do that, and then we go play conflict cards. Now, again, these are hidden from view, so you'd be like, how badly do I want this? Do I want to play a 9 and then hope that my dice roll will help make that better? I don't know, though. I think I'm going to play Field Marshal. Why? Because I'm looking at that event warily, going, he could probably win this. So Field Marshal is played by the Axis. Now the Allies are like, do I really care? I do, because my hand size is 8. It can go up to 12. How much do I care? You know what? I'm going to play this and hope that my event card saves the day. Okay, ready? Reveal. Oh, I'm so surprised. All right, determine dice and roll. Okay, so 3 dice is your core. Different cards will let you roll different additional dice, up to 5 in any different conflict. But here we're just flat out 3-3. All right. Alright, so we roll, and we get 4, 8, and 1 is 9. Here, we're going to roll, and we get 5. Oh, man, that's hefty. So, 4, 8, 5, 13, so 25 for the Field Marshal. And we're going to go, we've got 4, 8, 9. 9 and 8 is 17. Okay, so then we have the situation where we apply conflict card abilities. Conflict card abilities. So do I want to re-roll? Player may re-roll one, no dice re-rolled. Yeah, and it's not going to matter. 4, 8, 12. 12 and 8 is 20, so that's not going to do it. Here, on the other hand, now I can use my card here if I wanted to re-roll up to 2 Axis dice. Why would I do that? I'm winning anyway. So there you go. So the Allies have gone begrudgingly said, grumble, grumble, grumble. Fine, fine. Special ops, it didn't work for us, so it goes, well, it goes here on your opponent. Oh, wait, no. Yeah. It goes here on your player's turn. Yeah, that's right. Because they've got a weird thing where you give it to an opponent, and then on their turn they put it back in the tableau. It basically keeps you being able to buy a card right back in certain situations, I believe. So there you go. So that's it. That's that. We win the card. We have won Wolfpack. Yay! And that is a one-time event, so I decrease my hand size. So now, as the Allies, I'm down to 7 instead of 8 cards. And so I'm at a disadvantage. And this will go over here. During the end of round, because that's a particular type of card, during the year end, it is possible that that will be able to come back into play for reuse. But right now, it's out of play for the rest of the turn. All right. So we've done something here, and because we've done this, because we've actually won, yay, we get a bonus action. Da da da. Now, why do we bother? Why don't we just take it right away? Well, there's a couple reasons. There's lots of different bonuses. There's production bonuses. If you happen to take over your enemy's production place, they lose out. They lose cards, but you also get what's called a production bonus, which means you can try for another event. Again, if you fail, your turn ends though. So if you're trying to stack up a lot of cool things, like, hey, I want to attack this land, I want to do a blitzkrieg, I want to take over a production center, and I want all of this to happen magically and successfully every time, then you're going to have to understand that at any point in time, all of that chain can unravel. So, for example, you might not want to do a production bonus if you don't want to risk the fact that you might abort your blitzkrieg. So your blitzkrieg availability. So, and that's for a land battle. We'll do that in a second. All right, so we're done there. We've done everything we can possibly do. Draw back up because we didn't have our hand size reduced. All right, and there we go. And so I think for our action, what we would do is we would want to fortify. We can just do a free action to fortify here. I mean, that's a little early, but whatever. Like you can guarantee that when someone attacks Berlin, there's at least some additional advantage there to help you not lose it, because that production center would be a huge hit for the Axis powers. All right, and that's it. That's it for the turn. So then we turn our eyes back to our poor allied folk, and they are going to. They could try for events. They've got the ability to do amphibious attacks. Again, without this card, you cannot do an amphibious attack. So, but when you do, you can cross the channel. You can try and attack here. Make your way in there. We don't have a real good situation, but we're going to do it anyway. So let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do an amphibious assault. We are going to attack from London into. This is really. Don't do this in real life. London into Calais. All right. We're going to use Higgins boats because we have to, because that's amphibious. We could use any other. We're going to use Master Spy. We're going all out here. We're going all out. That's what we're going to do. All right. And then it's the Axis powers' turn. So they can use up to one general. So they can use a general. They can use a counterattack. And we'll go with that. We'll go with that. All right, and then we play the card, and we're gonna play. We're gonna do this Supreme Commander. All right, I played that game, and then here we're gonna be like, oh man, do I care? We're gonna do this one. Not wise. All right, so 13. We've got it. All right. May resolve up to 3 allied dice after resolving all events. Sweet. All right. Now, here's the thing. When it comes to land battles, you add up the number of land areas and sea zones that the player controls. If the attacker has more land and sea areas than the defender, then it gains a bonus die. Clearly, that's not the case here. Otherwise, no one gets it. So, there we go. All right. So then there's 3 dice to be rolled. Oh, man. Darn you. 5, 4, 2. All right. I don't know how the Axis. These dice are weighted. All right. So we have some serious issue. Okay. So, yeah, this gets a little crazy. So, 13 versus that. And then we do the resolution of the events. Play to conduct an amphibious assault. That just lets us do it. And this is, oh, darn it. Anyway, it wouldn't have mattered. I already used that one. This one said I should have actually been able to see the conflict card, but honestly, it wouldn't have changed it because I was going to play the biggest I had anyway. That's okay. All right, so no extra on that. And then here, using land require allies to reroll 1 allied die or of Axis choosing, or reroll any 1 die. I'm happy with this. I'm going to make him reroll this. 3. So there's that. And then using land conflict. At the end of a land conflict, an event player may reroll one or more of his dice. If no dice are rerolled, put this event back. See, I don't need to use this counterattack. I'm happy with what I got. For now anyway. All right, there's that. And then, after that, then we get the rerolls. Now, we can choose up to 3 rerolls on our card. Obviously, we're happy here. Like, we don't want to risk this. Here, yes, we're going to reroll up to 3 allied dice. What the heck? We're going to re-roll them all. All right, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that was failed. That just didn't work. So that was it. That didn't work. Goodbye, Supreme Commander. What a waste. These events, this will go back into the in here in due time. Assume that my opponent got it and did it on his first turn. This goes back here, the Higgins boats. And everyone draws back up to their hand size. So 7 and 9. And this got used, but it won, so yay. And that would be that. Yep, I think we got it. Yep. And then up to hand size 8, and there we go. Now that's sadness. Like, the allies are just not doing well today. So what did we do? Well, we didn't accomplish anything. So that would be effectively the end of turn. We don't get a bonus action, obviously. We don't get anything else fun. Yeah, so that was sadness incarnate. What if we'd won, though? What if we had won? If we'd won, we would have taken this and put it here. We would have gotten a bonus action, and we could have gotten a blitzkrieg opportunity, which we would take. What that means is you can take up to 3 additional land attack actions adjacent to what you just won. So, for example, if I had won that, if I had not played my cards so poorly, I would be able to, from here, go, oh, I'm going to do a blitzkrieg action here. And then you're going to try for that. You use the same cards, and you can even add to them, knowing you're giving a risk reward. Now, what's the drawback of that? Well, you're exhausting your resources, which means that when you do a blitzkrieg attack, you permanently reduce your hand size again. And if you do it again, again. So this is a really risky move unless you really know what you're doing. But if it pays off, say here, and then I do an action here, and I say I won that one, and then I do an action here, and I've got really low hand size, and I somehow managed to take over Berlin, well, then I'm in pretty good stead, aren't I? Like, I've done some amazing things. That's the power of Blitzkrieg. But again, high risk, but generally play your cards right, big reward. And there's that, and that's about it. Again, there's 3 very large scenarios that have very custom rules. When you have Barbarossa, you stop everything. There's a whole set of instructions on attacking various places along the front. You can do up to 4 guaranteed actions, I believe. Here, you've got D-Day, which has its own rule set that says when it's time to do this operation, just, ignore everything else, go down the list of actual actions to do and do them, and, try to make your inroads, like, better than I did, into the actual channel. And that's, again, you need a big push marker, so you got to build up for that. You want to get the right cards, you want to make sure your hand size right, and Operation Overlord also has Bagration, which is a different one. Those 2 happen in tandem, so they're really just 2 operations bundled together, but they both need to occur at the same time. And that's it. That's really what you get. We didn't go over sea battles, but it's fairly similar. Everything kind of drives by that conflict resolution. You say what you're going to do. You place your events, you then play your conflict cards, you resolve your events, resolve your conflict cards, and then then good things happen or bad things happen. All of the cards, again, as you're reading them, there's a lot of different ways that you can approach this. You can starve. You've got cards that starve your opponent of hand size, which is, again, like your hand size, conflict card size is your hit point size. So, and that's it. You're going on and on, back and forth. Yeah, so I guess that wasn't as short of a summary as I thought, but that's really Allied or Hitler's Reich World War II in Europe revisited. Now let's get into my second final thoughts on what I think of Hitler's Reich so many years later. All right, final thoughts. Again, on Hitler's Reich World War II in Europe. What is my revisitation score? Does it hold its own? Well, first let's do the cons, then we'll do the pros, then we'll do my summary. The rulebook is better. Yeah. So that's not a con. Why did I do that? Anyway, the original rulebook was not terribly difficult, not nearly as difficult as other rulebooks for me. I've seen some really bad rulebooks. This one wasn't great. it was not really organized in a great way, but because I really was enjoying the game, I dove into it and I figured out what I need to. Plus the support from GMT in the forums and places was tremendous. And so, at the same time, there's no denying the elephant in the room. The rule book was a problem. So if you get a first edition of this, grab the new rule book. It really does work. That's not a con, it's more of a caveat. The other thing is, even with the new rulebook, which really explain things in nice, organized, structured, sequential, orderly detail, there's still what I kind of call off-the-beaten-path math to contend with, and that means if you're used to 30-page manuals with lots and lots of rules and minutiae and exceptions and if-thens and whatever, this isn't going to be problematic for you. But because this game builds itself as World War II in 2 hours, and it kind of emphasizes the accentuation of simplicity, it is something to keep in mind that on your turn, you could literally say you take an action. But the thing is, there's lots of things about that that come into play. That if you stay on that path and you just do an action, particularly one that just ends your turn, it's bone simple. But you're going to have to think about exceptions to the rule. I mean, part of that's fun too. But for example, you've got your actions, but you also have bonus actions that you can take if you succeed in the original actions. Then you have production bonus actions if you take over an action, but you got to take those right away. But if those fail, then all the other stuff goes away. And then you've got your Blitzkrieg, which is a sort of sub phase where if you take a land action and you win the land action, then you can go through this Blitzkrieg thing. But if you take over a production center inside there, then of course you got to do the production bonus and that will take away and that means that you could, have your Blitzkrieg thwarted. But wait, no, there's a big push rule. And so if you have a big push going on, or you have an operation going on, then you can also have overrides to those that mean that, no, forget that. On those conditions, then you can get away with it, and you can actually fail and still keep going. I mean, you see what I'm saying here? That for someone simply trying to learn the rules, that's a lot to grok when you're just, going, hey, this is an easy enough game. Again, it doesn't say it's easy. It just says it's easier than the average bear when it comes to getting into a World War II game. It's also one of the exciting points, but we'll get into that. And so in other words, the order of things and the rules still require that you sometimes have a double take on the manual, the great rule book, just to make sure you have full awareness. And there's differences. You have to think about, the inputs for fleet battles, the inputs for land battles, how they differ, production centers, what they add, etc. Who owns what, intrinsically, like you don't have control of the sea, but you do have the control of the production center in the sea, blah, 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 blah. And there's some variations between Axis and Allies too, like, amphibious assaults have a different set of rule set, whatever. None of this is bad. I'm not saying this is bad. What I'm saying is that while the freeway in this game is a no-brainer and you can just drive along and enjoy it, taking any of the off-ramps to some of the situations that arise will require more attention to the road signs. That's what I'm saying. The other thing is, if you're playing this at a high level, it has been seen over several games as I've watched, and that there is an emphasis that if you starve your opponent of cards, if you can really nail that, you make it very difficult for them to do anything but try to contend specifically with that. In other words, a lot of the game kind of fades away if you're dealing with a very focused card starvation attack. Now that's a problem for very serious people where winning is all that matters. And if you don't find, usually, there are ways to make it so that if you've got someone seriously interested in winning, you're going to have to probably seriously, you're going to narrow the focus from all those wonderful possibilities in the card array. You're going to have to narrow those things down to just what helps keep you afloat. Now that's a caveat again for serious players who are focused on winning. If you're in some ways, it's sort of like even other games like Dominion. Like I remember when Dominion came out, and there was people going, look, all you have to do is do what it takes to get the gold to get the victory points, and you win. Those action cards, you don't need many of them. And it was true. I mean, basically, you'd get stomped. And what that does is it takes this whole group of fun little things for casual players and goes, oh, well, I guess none of those are very useful if I'm really playing it seriously. And so this is not a unique problem to Hitler's Reich. And for casual folks who aren't on the seat of their pants, getting every single thing arrayed to make sure they win, this is a great game. So just keep that in mind, depending on your penchant for how you play, whether you're focused on winning versus I focused on winning, but I like playing a great game just as much, then that's more of a thing where you're going to be able to take advantage of more of the fun things in this game. That's it for the cons. So let's get into the pros. The cons are pretty shiny. So Anyway, yeah, the original rule book again had info, but the new rule book really refines it into a coherent game plan for playing. You has an index, has a table of contents, has all of the things that you need to know when you need to know it in the manual in a great way. So I give it lots and lots of props. It's very quick to set up. Like it's just I love that it's just very quick to set up and get rolling. It is true. You do not have to spend time configuring the board just to get ready to play while your opponents go make lunch, have coffee, and go to rumba class. It's innovative, and that's the one thing that I think I like the most about it, is that this is a very innovative game in contrast to many of the other games that you're going to find that have a lot more conventional style to them. There's still no real world equivalent games for some of the things this does. I love the gamble factor. This is a gambling game. This is World War Poker, because you are gambling things all the time. You're gambling your action chain on how far you can press it. Do you go off the beaten path? Do you think you can pull off getting this production center event bonus and still getting back to your Blitzkrieg? Do you gamble using a middle not your strongest card in the hope that the dice will love you and help compensate for that? So you can save the higher powered cards in your hand for more important operations or more important events coming up. While at the same time hoping your opponents don't use the sabotage at just the wrong time when you're trying to use your power card, and then level the playing field. Or do you try and reduce your risk on the gambling by storing up a big push, knowing that you have a much higher chance of pulling off something really, really, really want to do? That's the kind of thing that I love about this, is that this is not a game of like thought. And it is thinking, but it's also like I'm thinking of what I could pull off, and I hope I can. Versus being able to have perfect information, perfect knowledge, etc. So I love the recreation of history by using the big battle interrupts. It's not like, oh, okay, at the end of World War II, during the end of the year, we're just going to go ahead and Barbarossa happens, so do these things. No, it's like you get to decide when Barbarossa happens, but you better be ready for it, and it will interrupt kind of everything and kind of sets things in motion you might not want. Now Russia can attack you back. Now the Western powers can do more things than they could. So you better hope Barbarossa doesn't wind up being a weak action on your part. And I love the way it simplifies the elements of World War II without getting rid of them or stripping them down to a non-factor. An example is you've got the simple tension of Russian versus Western allies. Like you have to use Russian cards if you can. But, I have this great American card, I have this less great Russian card, but because this front's here, I have to defer to the Russian side, grit my teeth and do it. There's a simple reality on the Axis powers of Italy being considered the weaker partner in that regard, because, they lose ties, Germans win ties, and so it recreates that, but it doesn't hamstring Italy in the process. It just doesn't do, and that's nice, because you still have powerful cards to play from Germans or Italians, and so I like that it does that. I love the complete dismantling of standard complexities of setup. Again, like I was talking about, you can literally, when you place that board down on the table, you're literally configured and ready to start playing. That's crazy. Like, everything's on there. You have right on the starting map all of the control factor, everything's controlled. Like, it's it. Like, that's it. You don't have to go through the setup and put 4 units here and there, and 6 units here, the missions here. No chits go anywhere. That's the beauty. Like, you're set to go the minute you lay that board on the table. And then you're only putting pieces on the board for the deltas that are occurring as a result of actions, for the changes in the game state. And that just cleans up things great. It really does. I love that the rules are, still really sensible and terse. And what I mean is, like, a land battle makes sense. Like, you have to hit an adjacent land battle. If you win the battle, you can go blitz if you want to, but there's a cost to blitzing. You're overreaching. Are you overreaching too far? That makes sense. Sea battles, you can fight anywhere, and fleets are fleeting. Even when you're done, even if you win, that fleet gets redeployed somewhere else. So you got to think of that. And and I've always said this, even in the original review, I love the fact that you're having conflicts and you're fighting for the actual actions that you're going to be fighting with. You're fighting for what you're going to fight with. And that's cool. Like, It's not a given that you can go use this event. You go, okay, I'm gonna go get this event, and everybody knows it too. Your opponent knows it. Like if you're going after this amphibious card for amphibious, there's some forewarning there. It makes sense. It's not like what I got in my deck, what I got here. No, it's like almost everything's known, but you still have to fight over the ability to do it. The battlefield is not just the map, and that's great. The battlefield is the map. The battlefield are the action array card or the event array cards that you're going to be going over. All the possibilities that you're going to take on the board, plus all of the events that can happen. Everything's a fight. Everything's a battle except for the most simple of actions, and so that makes it really cool, because other games, when other games try and do this kind of things, they'll usually have tokens, or they'll have phases of the game, or they'll have certain units that come into play and whatever. This just ensconces all of that complexity, all of that entire breadth of that game, of games like that, into a conflict via card play. And it works really, really well to me. I just love it. It's refreshing. It's different. Again, there's no analog like it I've seen quite yet. And so it still keeps it. The only thing close is a game called CIA versus KGB, which is a very boxed down, like a really small box 30-minute affair. Similar thing, like you have an objective to go for, you jockey with cards and events in your place, and then you unleash the secret card, resolve, and conclude who wins or loses. And that's really cool because you're always in it. What your opponent's doing, you're going to be part of. What you're doing, your opponent's going to be involved of. There's no I go, you go, and I go to lunch, and come back and find out what you did. No, like you're doing something, I have to react to it or not. And so this always keeps the action is compact, but it's not simplified or stripped down to the point where it's too compact, if that makes sense. And the pressure advantage kind of things are mighty. In some ways, I think like Last 100 Yards kind of had a similar thing where it's like you have this initiative, and if you keep rolling with the initiative, you could be going quite a ways in a row where your opponent's like, oh, this sucks. When am I going to get my moment? Then you get your moment, and you hope that you can get your own momentum going. It's a back and forth thing that really it's really tense. It really is. Like if I go a production center too far this way, then I lose out on all the possibilities, the end of turn of everything else, unless I have, again, special exceptional situations. So, because you've got the bonus actions, but you got to win. You got to, do you risk breaking the chain, with all these things, or forge on and pull off this war-swinging trifecta? If you can pull it off, but can you pull it off? That's the key. Off the other time, you can huddle up and try and get the best optimal situation of card hands for you before you try and do these things. Like, okay, I feel good about my hand. Nothing's guaranteed. I could still roll 1-1-1. And so even the best laid plans of mice and men. So same thing. Like, do I risk Barbarossa with an average hand or a not so great hand, or do I ignore it and just wait for the end of the year when like Barbarossa can't happen? So now we just kind of go do our, I don't know. These are gut wrenching choices you have to make when you play this game, and they're very quick and they're very speedy and expedient and compact, but they still have the same meat and soberness of resolution that you would get in a larger scale game. So in summary, Hitler's Reich, does it deserve the same score or less or more 4 years later? I believe yes. I rated it a 9 out of 10 then. I would have rated it a 10 at the time, which is pretty high praise. I still have gotten a little crankier about 10s. I'm a little less generous with that. I would still rate it a 9. I probably should have rated it an 8 back then because of the rule book, but because I was having so much fun, I was blinded by enjoyment. And so, yeah, definitely a 9, even more so. And with the rulebook redo, it's more than sufficient to recommend without reservation this game to anyone interested in the topic, who wants a nice 2-hour epic battle of World War II. I love the curiosities and eccentricities that this brought to the table. They're still unique. They're still interesting. The game time is not only short, but it's packed with short-term and large-term decisions that feel good and feel satisfying. Yeah, and so it is kind of sad that the subsequent game in this series is, I believe it's Hannibal. It's a different theater. It's not doing too well on P500. Those of you who know, P500 is a way where you have to have 500 copies for the company to go, yeah, okay, we'll take this to the next level. We'll do a second date. And so I hope that people, now that there's a new rule book, I really hope people give it a shot if it's of any interest to you and anything you've seen in the gameplay. I think it's worth your time. I definitely hope to. I don't have enough money to buy 200 copies of its successor. So, but anyway, Hitler's Reich, World War II in Europe, still a classic game, still one I enjoy, still unique, still refreshing, and still recommended. So take care, and we'll see you next time on Harebrained Games.